remember the exact moment I realized he was pulling away from me. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't say anything cruel or distant. It was just the way he laughed. Or rather, the way he didn't. We were watching an old episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, something we used to do religiously on lazy Friday nights, with wine and a shared blanket. But this time, when Jake made some ridiculous joke, I laughed and turned to him instinctively, waiting to catch his smile. He wasn't smiling. He was staring at his phone. He wasn't texting, just scrolling. His face unreadable, detached. It was the kind of moment most people would brush off. But I didn't. Because I knew the old him. The version of Caleb who used to pause the episode just to replay a scene he thought would make me laugh again. The man who used to look at me during the funny parts, not the screen. That night, I lay in bed next to him, listening to his breathing as he fell asleep, and I stared at the ceiling like it could give me answers. Something was shifting, quietly, slowly, but definitely. We'd been together 3 years, moved in after the first. I was working from home as a copywriter, juggling clients and deadlines from a desk 3 feet away from the kitchen. Caleb, on the other hand, was out in the world, a freelance photographer who had recently exploded on social media. His work was stunning. He got featured in a few local magazines, picked up clients across the states. His Instagram following blew up. Brands started flying him out for campaigns. He was in every way ascending. And I was static. Still in my pajamas most days. Still making the same kind of coffee I'd made for us for years. Still hoping he'd get home before 9 so we could eat dinner together like we used to. I wasn't jealous of his success. Truly I wasn't. I was proud of him, inspired by him. But what started as pride slowly turned into a kind of distance I couldn't cross. The first time I brought it up, we were driving home from his shoot. He looked tired but happy. I said, "Hey, I feel like we haven't really talked in a while. Like really talked." He nodded. "Yeah, it's been hectic. Sorry, babe." That was it. No follow-up. No curiosity about what I meant by talked. No questions like, "Are you okay?" or "Have I made you feel neglected?" Just, "Sorry, babe." That's when the voice in my head started. It whispered he's drifting. You're not enough. Someone else out there probably gets him more than you do. And the worst one, he's outgrowing you. I fought that voice every single day, but it was always louder when I saw him smiling at his phone or coming home late without explanation. When he traveled and barely checked in, when he cancelled plans because a networking event came up. I didn't want to accuse him of anything. I didn't have proof of anything, but I had instinct. And my instinct told me if I didn't do something, I was going to lose him. So I tried. I cooked more, cleaned more, wore that blue lace lingerie he once said made me look dangerous. He noticed. He smiled. He thanked me. But he never stayed long in that space. It was always back to work, back to his camera, back to his online world. It wasn't that he was unkind. It was that he was absent. And in that absence, I started thinking dangerous thoughts. What would it take to keep him? What would I be willing to give so I didn't lose him? I'd read once, probably in some stupid self-help article, that if you love someone, sometimes you have to give them freedom, even if it means you suffer for it. And the thought kept returning like a loop. I couldn't turn off. What if you offered him freedom before he asked for it? I don't know exactly when the idea of an open relationship took hold. Maybe it was when he came home smelling like someone else's perfume and claimed it was the makeup artist on set. Maybe it was when I saw a comment on his post from a girl with too many heart emojis. Or maybe it was just the quiet desperation building up inside me, the kind that says, if he's already halfway gone, at least give him a reason to stay physically present. I didn't want to open our relationship. I wanted to close the gap. But at the time I didn't know the difference. I thought offering him more space would bring him back. I didn't realize I was already dissolving into someone I didn't recognize. That was the week I began researching what it meant to love someone so much that you'd let them go, but still try to keep their hand in yours. That was the week I whispered to myself at 3 a.m. Maybe this is what compromise looks like. I didn't even know how to phrase the question at first. I sat on the floor of the bathroom with the lights off, back pressed against the cold tile phone, dimmed low, like I was doing something illegal. Caleb was asleep down the hall. His soft breathing drifted from the half-open bedroom door. Everything felt quiet unnaturally so, like the calm before the end of something. My thumbs hovered over the search bar, trembling. I finally typed how to keep a boyfriend who might be losing interest. The results weren't helpful. Blog posts, clickbait headlines, lists of 10 signs he's cheating and 5 ways to seduce him again. None of it felt right. What I wanted wasn't to seduce him. I wanted him to stay. I switched tabs, cleared my history, then typed how to suggest an open relationship without sounding desperate. That one stung, because I was desperate. Not for sex, not for excitement, just for his attention, for proximity, for him to see me the way he used to, even if he also saw other people. The thought made me nauseous. But I kept reading. There were forums, Reddit threads, articles written by polyamorous couples who made it work, words that kept coming up: trust, communication, freedom, mutual respect. It sounded clinical, like rules for a board game I didn't want to play, but I kept reading. One article said, offering your partner an open relationship can be a sign of maturity, a willingness to expand the definition of love to include personal autonomy. That line stuck with me, not because I believed it, but because it gave me something to cling to, a moral spin on a compromise I already hated. Maybe I thought if I showed Caleb that I trusted him that much, that I was that mature, he would realize how rare I was, how lucky he was. Maybe he'd finally stop taking me for granted. Maybe he'd stay. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I made breakfast like I always did: eggs over easy toast, half an avocado with lemon. Caleb didn't say much. He was scrolling through his phone again, eyes glazed over thumb flicking upward in endless loops. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked if he wanted orange juice. He said no. That was our conversation for the day. Over the next week, I practiced what I'd say in my head, like it was a monologue. Always starting soft. I know this might sound weird, but I've been thinking, or I want you to feel free, like you don't have to hide anything. Or the worst version. What would you think about maybe trying something open? Every version made me want to throw up, but I kept rehearsing, because the silence between us was getting too loud to ignore. And if I didn't do something soon, I felt like he'd just vanish. Not with a breakup, not with drama, just with indifference. And that terrified me more than any breakup ever could. I confided in one person, my friend Mia. We were on FaceTime one evening, and I blurted it out like a confession. I'm thinking of suggesting an open relationship. She blinked, stunned. Wait, what? Why? I shrugged, trying to sound casual. I don't know. Caleb's been distant, and maybe if he had the freedom to explore, it would take some pressure off us. Mia stared at me. Rachel, is he asking for this no? Not directly. Then why are you offering it? Because I'm scared he's already halfway gone. Her expression softened, but not with support, with heartbreak. Sweetie, that's not a reason to open a relationship. That's a reason to have a real conversation. I nodded, like I agreed. But deep down, I had already made up my mind. I wasn't doing this because I wanted to explore. I was doing this because I was tired of feeling like a placeholder in my own relationship. The idea took root like a weed I couldn't pull out. It wrapped around every interaction, every text left unanswered, every night he turned away in bed. I told myself it wasn't betrayal, that I was being generous, that love sometimes required letting go just a little to hold on. I didn't realize yet that offering your body as a bargain chip for someone else's affection isn't generosity, it's self-erasure, and I was already disappearing. By the end of that week, I knew I had to say it out loud, to bring it from the safety of my overthinking into the fragility of real air. I waited until the perfect moment, a night when we were both home, when he wasn't distracted, when his phone was face down and the air felt calm enough to speak into. I poured him a glass of wine. I told myself, he'll understand, he'll appreciate how selfless this is. But I was wrong, so wrong. I chose a night when the apartment felt like it still belonged to both of us. It had rained earlier, so the city lights outside the window looked softer, blurred by the mist. Caleb had come home early from a shoot rare lately, and we had actually eaten dinner at the same time at the same table. It felt like a good omen. We were sitting on the couch. The TV was on, but we weren't watching. Some background documentary on sharks. His attention was mostly on the wine in his glass. Mine was on my heartbeat. I had rehearsed this moment so many times in my head. I thought I would start gentle, ease him into the idea, maybe even laugh, make it sound casual, non-threatening. But the moment came and all my rehearsals fell apart. I just blurted it out. Have you ever thought about trying an open relationship? There was no build-up, no softening, no gentle language. Just 6 words, and immediate silence. He turned his head slowly, like he wasn't sure he heard me right. What? His voice was calm, but not in the way that meant peace. In the way that meant danger. I swallowed. I mean, not because I want to be with anyone else. I know you've been distant and maybe this would take some pressure off, or... So let me get this straight. He cut in. You want permission to sleep with other people. No, that's not. I was thinking of you. You're always traveling, always meeting new people, and I figured maybe this would... Wow, that word stopped me cold. He stood up, glass still in his hand, not drinking it. I knew something felt off, but I didn't expect this. Caleb. Wait, you've been talking to someone else, haven't you? What? No, I haven't. This wasn't about me doing anything. It was a suggestion because I thought... You thought what? That we're so broken, I'd just be grateful for a free pass. I froze, because that wasn't what I thought. Not exactly, but maybe. A part of me had hoped he'd take the suggestion as a compliment. That I trusted him that much. That I was willing to stretch my boundaries just to meet him where he seemed to be drifting. But he didn't see sacrifice. He saw surrender. He saw betrayal. He shook his head slowly, like something had just solidified in his mind. You've already checked out. You just wanted me to be the one to make it official. That's not true. Then what is true, Rachel? Because right now, all I'm hearing is that the girl I thought I knew is trying to twist the knife gently. I wasn't trying to hurt you. You just did. He didn't yell. He didn't slam anything. He just placed his wine glass on the table like he was done with it. Done with the night. Done with me. He walked toward the bedroom. I followed, panicking now. Please, Caleb, can you just let me explain? You just did explain. You want to open our relationship. That tells me everything I need to know. It was for you, I said, finally letting the words burst out. I did it because I thought you were slipping away and I didn't want to lose you. He stopped in the doorway, turned to face me, and his expression was the most heartbroken I'd ever seen it. You lost me the moment you decided I was already gone. He packed a bag. Not everything. Just enough to signal this wasn't a break. This was a departure. When he left, he didn't slam the door. Didn't even look back. I stood in the living room, still holding the wine glass I'd meant to hand him during a conversation I thought would prove my love. Instead, it became a prop in the story of my undoing. The next morning, I woke up to no texts. No calls. Just a heavy silence that seeped into the walls like mildew. It was over. Not because I cheated. Not because I betrayed him. But because I offered the wrong kind of sacrifice, and he couldn't unsee it. And the cruelest part, he never let me finish. He never heard me say I didn't want anyone else. I just wanted you, to want me again. The first sign that the narrative had slipped out of my hands came 3 days later. Mia texted me. Are you okay? I stared at the screen, unsure what she meant. I hadn't told anyone else. Caleb hadn't responded to any of my follow-ups. I was still wearing his old hoodie, still checking my phone every 20 minutes. I replied, why? Her answer came a few seconds later. Because Caleb posted that thing, about betrayal. I opened Instagram with trembling hands. He hadn't tagged me. He hadn't said my name. But the caption was brutal. Sometimes people say they love you while planning how to leave you quietly. They'll frame it like freedom. Don't fall for it. Underneath a black and white photo of him alone on a rooftop looking down at the city. The comments were worse. You didn't deserve that man. She doesn't know what she lost. You're better off now. Focus on your art. I wanted to scream. But scream at what? At people who didn't know the full story. At him for distilling our collapse into a poetic Instagram post. At myself for giving him the material. I didn't reply to Mia after that. What could I say? Don't worry, I didn't cheat. I just emotionally unraveled and offered my boyfriend sexual freedom in hopes that he'd remember to love me. There's no version of that story that doesn't sound pathetic. Or manipulative. Or both. And the worst part, I started to believe their version of me. People I hadn't talked to in months slid into my DMs with passive-aggressive concern. Hope you're doing okay, even though I heard some stuff. Let me know if you ever want to talk. Or explain. Explain to strangers, to acquaintances. What would I even say? That love made me desperate. that I tried to trade my dignity for a relationship that was already slipping through my fingers. Caleb's friends all unfollowed me within a week. His sister, who once sent me birthday cards and called me her soul sister, blocked me. Even my own co-workers seemed different, like they were tiptoeing around something they couldn't name, but had heard enough whispers about to avoid stepping in it. I had become that girl. The one who wanted an open relationship and probably had someone else lined up already. In the absence of clarity, people will write your story for you. And if it fits their idea of a scandal, they'll hand out copies like gospel. I stopped going out. I started walking with my head down in my own neighborhood. I changed my gym schedule to avoid running into mutual friends. I kept the curtains drawn and deleted my social media apps. Not because I had anything to hide, but because being misjudged by people who used to admire you hurts worse than being hated. One night I broke. I sat on the bathroom floor again, the same way I had when I first typed those fateful search terms. I whispered out loud like someone was listening. I didn't want anyone else. I just wanted him to choose me again. I repeated it, over and over, like a mantra, like maybe the universe would rewind time if it finally believed me. But time doesn't move backward, and people rarely care about your reasons once they've decided you're guilty. I kept the wine glasses in the cupboard, even though I stopped drinking. I kept his toothbrush in the drawer, though I knew he wasn't coming back. Because grief, when not for death, but for misunderstanding, is messier, less linear. You don't get flowers or sympathy cards. You just get silence. And maybe worse judgment from those who don't know you but pretend to. One afternoon, I opened a blank document on my laptop and titled it, "If anyone ever asked me what really happened." I wrote 4 pages before I realized I was crying. Not because of the loss, but because no one had asked. And maybe no one ever would. That's the thing about being labeled the villain in someone else's breakup story. You don't get closure. You don't get to defend your nuance. You just learn to live with the noise. And eventually, you stop trying to speak over it. The thing no one tells you about being the bad guy is how quiet it is, once everyone's done judging you. The unfollows stop. The texts vanish. The whispers fade into the background noise of everyday life. And you're left with the echo of your own breath, your own guilt, your own stubborn heartbeat still going in spite of everything. It's in that silence that you start hearing something else, your actual voice, not the one you crafted for Caleb, not the one you used to apologize to your friends, not the one screaming, "Please just hear me out," but the quiet one that never got a chance, the one that whispered you deserve to be chosen without begging. I started therapy, not for Caleb, not to win him back, not to make myself look good in anyone's story. I started because I couldn't live inside that silence anymore. My therapist, a woman named Naomi, didn't flinch when I told her what I had done. She didn't blink at the phrase open relationship or judge my motives. She just asked, "What part of you thought love had to be earned through sacrifice?" I didn't have an answer that day. But it haunted me for weeks. I journaled every night, most of it messy, some of it bitter. But every entry brought me closer to understanding why I offered something I never wanted to a man I deeply loved just to keep him in the room. I had confused loss prevention with love. I thought making myself smaller, more agreeable, more tolerable, would somehow prove I was worth keeping. But love that requires you to disappear isn't love. It's survival. And I was done surviving someone else's absence. I began changing things. Small at first. I took the wine glasses off the shelf and replaced them with plants. I bought a new bedspread. One he never touched. One that didn't smell like shared memories. I walked a different route to the grocery store, past the park, not the coffee shop where he once kissed my forehead in line. And slowly, I stopped checking who viewed my stories, stopped wondering what his sister was posting, stopped crafting rebuttals in my head to accusations no one had the courage to make to my face. Instead, I started writing things just for me. Letters I'd never send, posts I'd never publish, confessions that weren't meant for redemption, just release. I wrote I was willing to bleed quietly if it meant he'd stay near. I asked for an open relationship because I was terrified he'd already found someone who made him feel alive. I didn't want freedom. I wanted permission to hope. It wasn't pretty, but it was mine. One morning I made coffee, just 1 cup, and sat by the window while the rain tapped gently on the glass. I didn't think about Caleb. I didn't wonder what he was doing or who he was doing it with. I just felt my own presence. And that was new. That was sacred. Naomi asked me in our 4th session, "Do you forgive yourself yet?" I didn't answer, not because the answer was no, but because I realized I didn't have to rush there. Forgiveness wasn't a finish line, it was a direction. And I was finally walking toward it, not sprinting, not collapsing, just moving. There are still nights when I dream about him. Sometimes we're laughing. Sometimes he's just leaving again. But every time I wake up, I remind myself I didn't destroy something beautiful on purpose. I made a mistake wrapped in a desperate hope. And the fact that I'm still standing here, voice intact, heart not whole but healing, means I am not a villain. I'm just someone who tried to give what she didn't have to someone who didn't ask. And now I'm learning to give something better to myself. There was a time I thought freedom meant being able to walk away without guilt. Now I think freedom means staying when no one's watching. Not for them, not for the optics, just for you. That's what I did the day I deleted every draft I had ever written for him. I had filled dozens of notes on my phone with unsent apologies, unsent explanations, unsent truths. I thought someday I'd run into him at the grocery store or on the street and I'd say, "Wait, let me just explain." But one morning I opened the folder, read them all, one last time, and quietly hit delete. Because I no longer needed him to understand in order for it to be real. What happened was real. My pain was real. So was the love. So was the mistake. And so is the person I've become after all of it. Freedom, I've realized, isn't giving someone else permission to hurt you. It's not inviting confusion to your doorstep and hoping they'll choose clarity. It's sitting in the aftermath of your decisions, even the wrong ones, and saying, I'm still here. I still matter. I still get to choose who I am next. And for once, I don't feel like I'm shrinking to fit someone else's shape. I don't flinch when people ask if I'm seeing anyone. I don't apologize anymore when someone brings up what happened with Caleb. Because I know the full story. I lived it. And it's mine. Sometimes healing isn't a moment. It's not a single breath or an epiphany under candlelight. It's slow. It's the day you return the sweater he left behind. And don't cry afterward. It's when you see a post from one of his friends and you don't check the comments. It's when you fall asleep without replaying the fight. When you no longer feel the need to be seen as the good one. I thought I was giving Caleb freedom when I made that offer. But I was only confirming the freedom he had already taken. What I should have done, what I'm doing now, is giving myself permission to stop bargaining with someone else's silence. Because love is not a negotiation between fear and validation. It's a home. And I refuse to rent mine out to anyone who needs loopholes to stay. I still don't know if he ever truly understood why I said what I said. But that's not my job anymore. My job is to live in a way that honors the girl who made a mistake, not to punish her forever. To tell the truth, even when it's messy. To love without erasing myself. To trust that one day, someone won't need to be set free to remember I'm worth staying for. This isn't a redemption story. It's a quiet one. A story about what happens when the storm doesn't pass. You just learn to breathe differently in the rain. And if I ever get asked again, why did you do it? I'll say this. Because I loved someone so much, I was willing to lose myself to keep them. But I love myself now too. And I won't do that again.